Hey, big win for Common Sense came right around the end of your workday yesterday. It sounds like the transfer portal window may be shrinking just a little bit. We'll explain why that's a big dub for all of us as college football fans in just a little bit. But welcome into the Hard Count. This is the People's College Football Show. We talk ball every single day, live 3 times a week as we are right now on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. It is Wednesday, June 26, 2024. Last June 26, 2024, on the face of the planet. So we're glad to have y'all here, man. So glad to have y'all here. We have a ton to jump into, as we always do. Like I said, the transfer portal is shrinking. And if you tuned into yesterday's show, then you know that we are in the heart of Call Your Shot season. Called our shots for the SEC yesterday. Today, going to call a few shots for the ACC. I'll tell you what, man, the text on the front of this thumb for this live show is true to form, because I sat down this morning, sort of revisited our shots, revisited our takes that we had within that conference, and I'll be honest, they were a little mid. They were a little vanilla. Felt like, you know what, JD, we're kind of playing it safe here. And here's the deal, man. You play safe games, that's great, but guess what you get? Safe prizes. So I will say this. We never participate in hot takes. That's not our business. We respect this sport too much. We respect the people that make this sport what it is too much. But with that being the case, we are swinging for the fence. We're swinging a big bat, and we're calling our shot within the ACC a little bit later. We love college football, as you can tell. We're blessed to talk about it every single day for a living, which is still just absolutely mind-boggling to me. We love the actual sport that's being played. I love the scheme. I love the 11-on-11. I love the matchups. But one thing about college football that we all enjoy, regardless of you like drawing up inside zone or not, is the storylines. So what are the big storyline games for 2024? There's one that I have circled, Josh Heupel's return to Norman, Oklahoma. That's going to be packed. Like, in terms of, sheer attendance, it'll be packed. But in terms of, like, the week that is with all the external noise around Oklahoma's first game in SEC play and Josh Heupel going back to his alma mater, that's going to be a lot of fun. I got 3 other games I want us to unpack together when it comes to the biggest storyline games in 2024. Also, what are going to be the top offenses and defenses in college football 25? They're dropping those rankings tomorrow. I believe today was a deep dive in gameplay that probably dropped right as we got on the air. So we'll kind of call our shot here in the spirit of Call Your Shot season. We're going to tell you who we believe are going to be the top offenses and defenses in college football 25. I am still waiting on figuring out what our plan is in Dallas, because when this game drops, we will be at the Omni for SEC Media Days. So we got to find a way now to play this game when it drops. But regardless, we'll tell you what the top units are going to be within that game. And we've called our shot a fair amount on this show. We've mentioned it, multiple times now, even in the opening. But I put out the call on my Twitter page at JD Pickell, and I asked y'all, hey, what shot are you calling for the 2024 season? So I got 3 of those I want to unpack together, and we're going to have a great show, man. We're so glad to have y'all a part of this. I say it every single show at the top for a reason. We're grateful for y'all, and whatever you got going on, whether you're listening to the podcast on playback in the car, whether you're watching live on YouTube, whatever you are doing, just big inhale, exhale, enjoy this next hour or so of just college football, and like Pat McAfee says, consider this a mental vacation of sorts. So let's go on the beach for this mental vacation. Let's start with calling our shot in the ACC. I have to put this disclaimer out there. These are not season predictions for specific teams. Now, the storylines of what these shots are going to be could definitely have a large impact on the total win-loss record for your team, but I want to make sure we're clear. Prediction season is still a little bit further on the horizon. It'll be after media days. It'll be once we get closer to the actual games being played. Then we'll start predicting things from this team's going to win this conference, this team's going to do this from a win-loss perspective. These are just shots we're calling, baby. Taking out the bat a little bit, swinging for the fence. I never really played baseball at a competitive level. The kid started throwing the ball, and it was really fast. So I said, let's put on the shoulder pads and a different helmet. Let's go hit some people. So with that being the case, let's jump right into this, man. For Florida State, the shot that I'm calling for them is that DJ Uiagalelei has the best season of his entire collegiate career. And this is something we've said a couple of times on different shows, but I want us to firmly take a stance on this right now. If he has the best season of his career, Florida State is playing for an ACC championship. And DJ Uiagalelei, man, he is a polarizing figure because of what he has been since he was a recruit at the high school level, was a five-star cat, gets to Clemson. He's following Trevor Lawrence. Yours truly at that point in time put down a Heisman future on him. Yes, I did that, and I felt pretty good about it. Things went how they went at Clemson. He didn't have the five-star kind of career that he would have liked to have out there in Death Valley, Clemson, South Carolina. With that being said, though, what would the best season of his career look like? Well, so far, his best year has been at Clemson, actually, funny enough. 22 touchdowns, 2,500 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions with a completion percentage of 62%. And again, this is the same dude now that Clemson fans were like, get Cade Klubnik in there, get DJU out of there. He's not the guy. That stat line I just read you throughout the course of a season was good enough for Clemson to win the ACC. Now, obviously, Cade Klubnik was a spark plug at different points in times. Cade Klubnik lit up the ACC title game. But that stat line I just mentioned was good enough to win the conference. So if he has his best season of his career, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that it's a little bit better than that. I'm not saying he's going to go ahead and throw for 40 touchdowns, but let's go ahead and peg my guy right around 25 touchdowns, 2,800 yards, 5 interceptions, 63% completion percentage. I think that's more than good enough, again, for Florida State to play for the ACC championship. And the reason why I believe that is we look at DJU's best year and we look at what Jordan Travis did last year. The stat lines aren't all that different. Like Jordan Travis had 20 touchdowns passing, 2 interceptions, 2,700 yards, and 64% completion percentage. So about 200 or so yards more. He was pacing to have more touchdowns than DJU through the air, should he have been able to play the whole season. About 3 less interceptions, completion percentage right about the same as what DJU had in his best year at Clemson. Like, you don't have to light the world on fire to go win the ACC playing quarterback at Florida State. And that's not a knock on the quarterback. I think it's more so a compliment to the way that Florida State plays ball. It is a complementary operation. It is offense, take care of the football, be good situationally, quarterback make good decisions, we're going to run the football, defense, go do your thing. Like, that is how they get down at Florida State. It is not a quarterback-centric, quarterback-driven operation. Now, you still ask a lot of the quarterback schematically, and again, what I just said, to make good decisions, but this is not a situation where you get the JanSport backpack out and say, all right, DJU, carry us. That's not how it is. And so, again, I think DJU has the best season of his career. I think a lot of Twitter trolls are going to have to go delete some of their takes on DJU, and I cannot wait for it. So the shot we're calling there, DJU has the best season of his entire collegiate career. That includes his time at Oregon State. Now, the next shot we're going to call here, I told y'all, we're corking the bat. We're swinging for the fence. We're not saying things just to say it for engagement. Like, I'm telling you this because I believe it's going to happen. I think Cam Ward is going to have a top 5 single season of all time kind of performance in Miami history. Let me rephrase that. Cam Ward, at the end of this season, will have had a top 5 statistical season in the history of Miami Hurricane football, specifically in passing yards. Right now, the quarterback who has had the 5th best single season when it comes to what they've done in total yards throwing the football is Ja'Cory Harris. In 2009, he threw for right around 3,300 yards. Well, Cam Ward, a season ago at Washington State, threw for over 3,700 yards. Now, Washington State and what Shannon Dawson's going to do, I think it'll be a little bit more balanced. I think they still want to throw the football deep. Do not get it twisted, but I think it'll be a little bit more balanced. The season before that, though, Cam Ward threw for 3,200 yards. Y'all, Cam Ward hasn't thrown for less than 3,000 yards in a season since he was a true freshman in 2020 during the COVID era at University of Incarnate Word. All right? They don't even play in a power conference. Like, my man is a walking stat sheet stuffer. I think he's going to have a massive year at Miami, and I think he will be, again, in that top 5 of all-time performances. In passing yards, yes, specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ran it up in a couple of other categories as well. Cam Ward, I've said this many times, he is going to be I think, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And I think by him having that kind of season at Miami next year, Miami will also have, I think, the top offense in the ACC. So a little 2-for-1 call your shot here when it comes to Miami and Cam Ward. He has a top 5 statistical season of all time at Miami. And Miami, again, is going to be a top offense in the ACC. If you're pushing back on that, you're saying, hey, all right, I hear you on that, but, like, are we sure Miami's got the juice to do that? Are we sure? Like, we saw them last year, and they kind of struggled at quarterback. And I'm like, yeah, we saw them last year. They were the second best offense in the ACC statistically. And they had a revolving door at quarterback. Like, you were going through Tyler Van Dyke and Emory Williams. Like, you have a much better player now at quarterback. You have, in my opinion, better skill positions to help a guy like Xavier Restrepo with what you did through the portal. I'm excited about Miami. I think the offense will be the best in the ACC. Now, speaking of the ACC, as this is what this whole segment is, Clemson has had a lot of success in the conference over the course of the last few years. Like, Dabo Swinney, man, say what you want about him on TikTok and all that. Like, we had a whole segment on that yesterday. I have no problem with Dabo being cringy. You know what, though? Whether it's Brent Venables or whether it's Wes Goodwin, Dabo Swinney has great defenses. He does. Like, Dabo Swinney's defense in 2024, this upcoming season, I'm calling our shot here, they will have the top defense in the conference. Yet again. So Miami top offense, Clemson top defense. Wes Goodwin, yes, they lose some production from last year. They had 49% back from last season's unit that was, I think, the top defense in the country as well, depending on which stat you look at. He brings back Peter Woods. He brings back Barrett Carter. And they have not allowed more than 22 points a game at Clemson, regardless of the DC, regardless of the personnel, since 2013. All right, that's saying something. Like, say what you want about Brent Venables, say what you want about who they've had on that roster, on the defensive line. I understand all that. But to some degree, you got to give Dabo some credit here for fielding a defense like that, whether it comes to what he's doing in the recruiting trail, how they put it together schematically, any way you want to slice it, Dabo Swinney has been the common denominator in their elite defensive play at Clemson. So I believe that Clemson can and will have the top defense in the conference yet again, even with losing half their production from last year's squad. Now, one more shot I want to call here. I lied to you. 2 more shots we want to call here in the ACC. Virginia Tech. Va-Tech just kind of hanging out on the fringe of the ACC conversation. And, you know, we talk about Clemson and Miami and Florida State, and for good reason. Talk about NC State for good reason. Grayson McCall, I think, is going to do big numbers this year. I'm just here to tell you, Virginia Tech will be in the ACC title conversation heading into November. Continuity plus momentum equals confidence. Confident football teams win ball games. Last year, Virginia Tech finished hot. Fighting Brent Pryce, won 5 of their last 7. They are number 1 in returning production in the whole country. All right, so a lot of the dudes, most of the dudes that were a part of that hot streak to end the year, they're back. One of those dudes that I'm most excited about to see for an encore this season is Kyron Drones. Kyron Drones was a high-profile quarterback prospect coming out of high school, commits to Baylor, ends up transferring to Va-Tech. He played his best ball at the end of last season. It kind of felt like he got in rhythm and the light bulb went on for him. Leading up to November, their toughest game is at Miami, which it'll be a tough game. I mean, I'm high on Miami. That's been well documented. It's a Friday game, though. Weird things happen on a Friday. Every other game on Virginia Tech's schedule, in my opinion, is extremely manageable. Like, there's very few games there that I will look at Va-Tech, look at the other side, and say, man, I don't know. It's going to take something special today. It's going to take a little bit of something that Virginia Tech hasn't done just yet. I need to see something new from Va-Tech to get it done. Like, they have everything on the roster to be a one-loss team, assuming Miami is what we are cracking them up to be. They have everything on the roster to be a one-loss team going into November. Now, they host Clemson November 9th. All right, so Clemson's got a roll in there with Enter Sandman blaring. I'm just saying, if they are that one-loss team when they play Clemson, that's going to be a big one for the ACC title race. Do not be surprised in the slightest if Virginia Tech somehow finds themselves on the front doorstep of playing in Charlotte going into that last month of the season. Last one for you here, SMU, man. They're the new kid on the block, right? They won the AAC last year, and good for SMU, man. Raising a lot of money. Those Highland Park pockets are deep. I tell you what, man. Good for them. Welcome to the ACC. Glad to have you here. Y'all, they're not going to miss a beat. They're not. Rhett Lashley and co., they won the AAC last year. How many times have we told y'all, if you got a quarterback, you got a chance? Y'all, they got a quarterback. Preston Stone, I think, is one of the best quarterbacks that nobody in America seems to be talking about, probably in large part because he played in the G5. It's not going to be the case anymore. He is going to announce himself, I believe, at a national level, threw for over 3,000 yards last year, 28 touchdowns and 6 picks. And this offense, too, under Rhett Lashley, he makes it go. You got a quarterback, and you got a quarterback whisperer. If you have two of those things in college football, you are going to have a chance in nearly every single game. And when you're the new kid on the block, typically how society operates is there's some level of hazing, right? Like we are, I wouldn't say we're pro-hazing, but we understand that hazing is a part of, most circles whenever you find yourself in a new situation. That's not excusing anything that's wild, that's been just borderline abuse and inappropriate when it comes to hazing. We're getting off track here, but my point here is there's zero hazing going on when it comes to SMU and their schedule, their first year in the ACC. None. Like it is almost as good a schedule as you could ask for as you enter into a power conference. You play Florida State in Dallas. Believe you're at Louisville. Outside of that, no Miami, no Clemson, no NC State, no Virginia Tech. It's set up now for SMU to roll in there their first year in the conference. I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if they won 9 football games. I wouldn't. For the reasons I just said. Quarterback play, Rhett Lashley, and then also I love what they've done in the portal combat side of things. They have added 20 transfers with an emphasis on the line of scrimmage. Of those 20 transfers, 5 of them have been on the offensive line. 8 of them have been either a defensive lineman or an edge defender. So worth noting, too, the guys they're grabbing at those positions, they're from schools like Georgia, Ohio State, like power conference big boys. And just because those guys weren't dudes at Georgia or Ohio State doesn't mean they can't still help SMU their first year in the ACC. The point I'm trying to make here is they got quantity, yes. They also got some quality, is my opinion. I think that's going to translate really well for SMU their first year in the ACC. So to rehash the shots that we're calling here, DJU, his first year at Florida State. Say what you want about Oregon State. Say what you want about Clemson. He's going to have the best year of his career. I didn't even mention this, but he also has the best skill he's ever had around him in his career. He's got the best play caller he's ever had around him in his career. That's going to be massive for him. That's going to make for his best season of his career. Cam Ward will have a top 5 all-time at Miami kind of season this upcoming year. That will translate to Miami having the best offense in the ACC. Who's going to have the best defense in the ACC, you ask? It's going to be Clemson. Why? Because say whatever you want about Dabo Swinney being cringy on TikTok and social media. My guy hasn't had a defense that has allowed more than 22 points a game since 2013. That's not changing this upcoming season. Vatek, they will be in the ACC title discussion, and SMU, they will be in the ACC title discussion heading into November. Important disclaimer there. Wouldn't be surprised if they were in the ACC title discussion when it's all said and done, period. But SMU, they won't miss a beat. I get it. They're a G5 school, new kid on the block. I get it, but the schedule and the pieces they have on this roster, they're going to compete from day one. Pony up tempo. Here we go. So unpacking some of y'all's shots you called too were a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun doing that. So we'll get to those a little bit later in the show. But glad to have y'all a part of this, man. I see someone asking in the chat, how do we feel about USF making the playoffs? USF. Tell you what, man, I love Alex Golish. If I were buying stock in head coaches, we did a segment a few weeks ago, maybe it was last week actually, head coaches with less than 3 years of experience that we would hire to run our program. The obvious ones, you got Dan Lanning, you got Marcus Freeman. Alex Golish, hand up, he's a snub on that list. We should have put him on that list. I like USF a lot. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on the playoff talk when it comes to G5 just yet. I feel like we need to get a chance to kind of get our bearings on that conference, but nonetheless, we will talk about it as it rolls on further and further into this season. Got some things in the works now when it comes to G5, all right? We got some things we're talking through, some ideas we're kicking around, and when we have more concrete thoughts there, we'll give them to you. But we will not disregard the G5, all right? We love the G5. All right, some caffeine and we're rolling. Yep, we're fueled up. We're ready to go. All right. We love the actual sport that's played between the white lines. Having played the game, I'm kind of like a football nerd in some ways. I love watching the matchups, and like I said, I like drawing up like the diagram. If you've seen some of our old stuff, you want to deep dive the archives of YouTube. I used to go on a like telestrator, I think that's the word, like a digital board and kind of dissect plays, and that was a blast. That's one side of enjoying college football. The other side is the storylines that goes into the actual games. And I'll tell you what, man, in terms of storyline games in 2024, y'all, we are spoiled. Spoiled. We have so many games with juice around them leading into that game. I want to unpack those right now. But, y'all, week one starts with a bang. Miami at Florida. I don't know if you need – I don't know if there's a – I mean, Paul Feinbaum said it. He believes that's the most important game in college football in 2024. And, like, I understand if you disagree, but I think you have a hard time making your case because you look at everything going into this game. It's in the state of Florida. It's two massive brands that have an illustrious history. It's a rivalry game. They're playing for bragging rights. They're also playing for pole position when it comes to being able to get the upper leg on the recruiting trail in terms of the pitch you can make in living rooms. The big part of this, too, it is a pivotal year 3 for both Mario Cristobal and for Billy Napier. The thing we say on this show, man, it is a show-me year for both sides. It's a show-me year. Because if you're Mario Cristobal, you've trended the right direction. You've built your roster. I think the culture's in a good place now. Like it is now your show. Same thing for Billy Napier. When he got there, you could say, hey, there's no way this boat's going to float, man. We got too many holes in it from a roster level, probably from an operation level. Like we can't get this thing out into the water just yet. And oh, by the way, the water is the SEC. So what I'm trying to say here is now by year 3 for either side, there's no more excuses. There's no more, oh, we're going to do this. It's like year 3 is you go out and do it, and it starts in that first game of the season. I'll tell you what, whatever happens in this game, the overreaction that happens for either fan base, I mean, it's going to be. I had somebody on Twitter in my mentions say this, and I think they hit it on the head. Post-game Twitter from this one is going to be cinematic. Like, grab your popcorn, get your snacks. It's going to be wild. Because if Mario Cristobal loses to Billy Napier, folks are going to say, oh, my gosh, it's supposed to be year 3. We got Cam Ward at quarterback. We hit the portal. And for what? And for what? We can't beat Billy Napier. Their over-under win total is 4.5. If Billy Napier loses to Mario Cristobal, they're going to say, we were at home. It's year 3. Are you kidding me? How are we dealing with this right now? How are we still having excuses for why we can't win the big game at home against a team in state? They went 7-5 last year. We can't beat a team from the ACC? That's been our calling card for a long time, is that if you put us in another conference, we would run things. And we lost to that team? I'm just telling you, both have a case to be made. Neither side is a complete story. Like week 1 does not define you. That 12-game season is what defines you. And I think this season will define both sides in a lot of ways. But if you win this game, both sides are saying, well, how good could we be then? Like, hey, we walked into the swamp, one of the toughest places to play in college football. We took that thing over. Walk in your stadium, take over your stadium. How good could we be? That was Cam Ward's first game. Like, he's only going to get better from here. All right? Like, if you were going to beat us, you were going to slow this offense down, it was going to happen in this game. In week 1, when we're all still trying to gel for the first time in a real game, in a game scenario, not game-like scenario, in a game scenario. For Florida, you're saying, all right, that team's supposed to be a college football playoff team. That team is maybe supposed to win the ACC, or at least be in contention for it. How good could we be? So there's going to be an overreaction on either side, but I think the fact that it's year 3 and there is such a intense standard on both sides, it's going to be a lot of fun. So the storyline there is obvious and tremendous and poetic, and we love everything about it. Speaking of intense storylines, I don't know that we have a more intense storyline than Tennessee going to Norman, Oklahoma in week 4 of the college football season, so we don't got to wait long, y'all. All right, we don't have to wait too long. Josh Heupel returning to his alma mater, a place where he was the Heisman Trophy runner-up, a place where he brought a national title back to, also a place where he coached on staff and did not have his contract renewed. Just let that sink in for a second. This is a place that he took to a national championship as a quarterback, where he went to school, where he essentially, grew into an adult, had the most formative years of his life, probably some of the best memories of his life. Goes and coaches there, doesn't get his contract renewed as a co-OC. I don't care how out of touch you are with your emotions or how much you claim to be unemotional. I'm not speaking of Josh Heupel now. I'm just saying for the human race as a whole. If you have a history at a certain place with a lot of positive memories and it ends on a sour note, you go work somewhere, it ends on a sour note, and then you see that individual back in another competitive setting, you don't think you want to beat the ever-living brakes off of them? And I'm not even telling you this with any intel or insight. I'm just saying, from a human nature standpoint, this game, I have to believe, for Josh Heupel, using human logic will be supercharged emotionally. They're going to want this one. And for Oklahoma, it's not lacking storylines either. First game in the SEC. You've been told for so long now how the SEC is going to chew you up and spit you out. Your over-under win total 7.5. You got Tennessee walking in there. They're a sleeper college football playoff team. And the crowd's at your back. I'll call our shot right now, too. I'd be surprised if we don't get this one as a night game, if we don't get this one for College game day. This should be the game of that week. It's going to be intense. It's going to be supercharged. Now, it's also just a massive game for either side when it comes to what they want to accomplish in 2024. It's got swing game written all over it. Both sides, I think, could be 3-0 walking into it. And for Nico, if you go get a win on the road in SEC play, go to 4-0, that'd do a lot for your confidence. And confidence and momentum and belief for a young quarterback now, that can go a long way carrying you out throughout the rest of the season. For Oklahoma, they will be 3-0, I believe. They go to Auburn the week after this game. Talking about momentum, talking about wanting to hit the over on that 7.5 win total. You're at 4-0 after the first month of the season. Vibes would be pretty high. So massive implications for their 2024 aspirations for both sides, and emotionally, especially for Josh Heupel, the return to Norman. It's going to be a fun one. That is going to be a lot of fun. Another fun game, man, week 6. This is on par with the Josh Heupel return to Norman. Clemson at Florida State, or as I like to call it, the DJU Bowl. And DJ Uiagalelei, man, God bless him, when he pivoted out of his time at Clemson, he said all of the right things. I mean, even after the game where he was benched during the regular season, I believe Clemson had to come back against, it might have been Notre Dame. I'm blanking on who exactly it was against. But they had to respond against somebody. It might have been Syracuse, actually. I think it was Syracuse. They're playing, DJU gets benched after playing a large portion of the game. Kate Klubnik comes in, they win the game. The thing I want to emphasize here again, DJU said all of the right things. Said, hey, I get it. Coach had to give somebody else a chance. I'm paraphrasing here, but he was an adult about the whole situation. He gets to go and play his former team that more or less, by nature of how they treated that situation, decided somebody else was better fit for his job. Even in the ACC title game, the same thing happened. Again, I understand that you're going to say all the right things. You're going to put on this, not front, but you're going to have this persona of keeping it all about the game. That's what competitive people do with a good head on their shoulders, which I believe DJU is. But you can't tell me it doesn't mean something to him. Can't tell me he wouldn't relish in the idea of walking off that field throwing for 3 or 4 touchdowns against a team and a coach that told him he wasn't good enough to start for them. And again, I don't think that Dabo Swinney has any ill will towards DJU either. I think Dabo Swinney and DJU have a great relationship. But I do think when it comes to the strictly competitive side of things, DJU would love to get this one. Would love to get this one. And I'll say this, I think this game will help kind of craft the narrative too around DJU's time at Clemson. Because originally the thought was, hey, DJU, 5-star, goes to Clemson, doesn't have the success of a Trevor Lawrence, must not really be that good. Swing and a miss for DJU, that's too bad. And then he leaves and the offense actually gets worse. And DJU also, I believe, spoke to The Athletic and said, hey, I wasn't crazy about what we were doing offensively. It's just my 2 cents. They've switched. They have since pivoted offensive staff since then. But I think the narrative now is slowly starting to turn a little bit to where it was all on DJU, and now it's kind of like, well, who was it on actually? Like it was one-sided, and now I think it's a little bit more open for discussion. If DJ Uiagalelei trots out there in Week 6 in Tallahassee, throws for 3 touchdowns, 300-ish yards, carves up Clemson's defense, which, again, I think is going to be a really good defense. How does that narrative change? I think you go from pointing the finger at DJU to pointing the finger a little bit more towards Clemson. And I'm not saying there's a right answer there. I'm just saying, whether it's fair or not, the narrative around his time at Clemson will be crafted in some way based on this game. Also, like, take the DJU stakes out of it and what he has personally at stake, if you're buying into that storyline. This is huge for both sides. Like, this is huge when it comes to the inside track to get into Charlotte. So, massive game from a macro level, massive game from a storyline level. And I don't think Dabo or DJU would tell you this, but I do believe that DJU would love to beat his former team. Yes, because it's a competitive football game that matters on the win-loss record, but I also just like everybody loves to be able to get one over on someone that told them, hey, you weren't good enough. I'll just leave it at that. Last one here, and this is an obvious one. It's fairly one-sided here. Michigan at Ohio State. Now, for Michigan, I'll be honest, the storyline juice, outside of it being, the greatest rivalry in college football, excluding Army-Navy, like, there's not a ton there. Because Sherrone Moore's walking in. It's his first year as the head coach. Michigan's replacing a lot. Like, Michigan in a lot of ways coming off a national championship. The pressure, I think, is a good bit lower than it has been in the previous games. Also worth noting, Michigan, they could lose to Ohio State, and if they're 10-1 going into that game, might have a chance to make the college football playoff. That's neither here nor there. The storyline is really one-sided. It's all on Ryan Day. And the reason why this storyline is so massive is because you and I have talked about this. Other people have talked about this game specifically, not just Ryan Day, and we're sitting here in June. Like, this has been a talking point for a long time. Can he beat Michigan? And the feeling is, if you can't beat Michigan this season, when's it going to happen? Because every single variable going into this game is favoring Ohio State. It's favoring Ryan Day. 1, it's in Columbus. 2, you have the Monstars on your roster. 3, you have the experience. Like, there's nothing that Ohio State can point to and say, yeah, that might be a problem for us. There's nothing there that I'm looking at right now and saying this is going to be Ohio State's Achilles heel. So if they don't get it done this year, if Ohio State loses, and we've said this before, I think things just get progressively more toxic. Now, I will say this again. If Ohio State loses, the answer is not fire Ryan Day. That's my opinion. However, I don't think that my opinion is the majority when it comes to how people feel in Columbus should they lose to Michigan for the 4th year in a row. All I'm saying. But at what point, too, if it's so toxic, do you just say, like, hey, man, and this is speaking from Ryan Day's perspective, I go 11-1, and my approval rating it could not be lower. It could not be lower. Like, I am just being told what I am not as a head coach, and I win nearly every single game that I coach. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. At what point do you just say, hey, thanks, but no thanks, Ohio State. I'm going to go coach for X, Y, and Z other college football team. Hey, NFL, maybe I'll go, do something with y'all. I'm not saying it happens. I'm saying that discussion, I think, maybe gets a little bit more traction. But let's talk about the positive potential outcome here. Because if Ryan Day beats Michigan, the storylines will be, has Ryan Day put it together? Did Ryan Day get Ohio State over the hump? Credit to Ryan Day, and this is genuine. If they beat Michigan, credit Ryan Day for the way that he has evolved and adapted as a head coach and delegated the play calling and got a new defensive coordinator a couple years ago and attacked the portal. Like, he deserves a lot of credit if they do get over the hump. And this is one thing we've said for a while here. Keep that same energy around Ryan Day that you had when he was losing to Michigan and all the hyperbolic statements we were saying about him then. Make sure that we give him his flowers if he does beat Michigan. Just so we're on the same page there. Now, something to consider within this game, too, there's a chance we see it again in a week's time. Like, we could see this game, they could run it back for the Big Ten championship. So, yes, that would probably also provide some juice to it. And if Ohio State loses to Michigan, again, I don't know that I would be surprised if they were still in the college football playoff. Like 10-2 Ohio State, for my money, is getting in. If Ohio State loses and then goes on a run in the college football playoff, heck, they win the national championship, well, then the discussion becomes a little bit different. But regardless, a lot of good storylines on deck for us in 2024. Man, I cannot wait for it. Cannot wait for it. Let me know in the comment section, what is the game you are most looking forward to from a storyline perspective in 2024? That'll be fun to unpack those together, man. Appreciate everybody tuned in live. If you have not yet already, like the video and subscribe to the channel. I should have plugged this earlier, but we'll plug it right now. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast feed, even if you watch on YouTube, like this is just for everybody. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast feed, that is a great way to move the mission forward of this show. We've got a great podcast audience. Would love to grow it some more. So 5-star review, subscribe to that, and we would appreciate you tremendously for that. I believe the link to that podcast is in the description to this show, but if not, you can find it pinned once this show gets off the air. I'll go ahead and pin the links to both the Spotify and Apple podcast feeds. So thank you for that. Hey, big win for Common Sense yesterday. Big win for Common Sense. And I know we haven't crossed the finish line just yet, but the D1 Council is proposing a move from a 45-day transfer portal window for college football and basketball as well to 30 days. Now, it's unclear what this would look like exactly, but right now you have a 30-day window after the season ends to jump in the portal. You have a 15-day window in the springtime to jump in the portal. So what I'm assuming would happen here, again, it's unclear. We'll see how this whole thing shakes out, but I'm assuming the idea would be that you go 15 days in the fall, 15 days in the spring. Now, full transparency, if it were me, I would go like a week for both of those, and we'll kind of explain that right now. But again, this is a win for Common Sense, because I think what we're saying here, giving these kids 30 days to decide if they want to jump in the portal or not, is they need 30 days to make this decision. It will take you a month to make a good decision on if you want to go play your college football somewhere else. And like outside of extenuating circumstances, which in my mind is your head coach leaving or your position coach leaving, and if your head coach leaves, you get 30 extra days to jump in the portal. I mean, we saw that in like a very extreme fashion last season with the Saban retirement and the ripple effect from that. Outside of extenuating circumstances, when was the last time anyone, like any human being, ever needed a month to make a decision? My guess would be never. Probably never, because the month isn't used to actually deliberate on the decision. The month is used to try and gather more information, right? What's actually happening here, though, is people are taking that month and using it to leverage themselves and grab more NIL dollars and say, well, hey, I could get more money at X, Y, and Z school. Might jump in the portal. I know that I got a deal somewhere else. Can y'all match that? And for that to go on for 30 days, y'all, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's not helping anyone. And the pushback from this is going to be, well, hey, these kids should be able to maximize their value, right? Yes, of course they should. But when they're in the portal, like, you shouldn't be able to leverage yourself against a potential opportunity while you're still on a current roster. That's what the portal is for. And I get it all goes, there's tampering and all that. I understand that. But I'm just saying, the fact that you are hopefully shortening this window for guys to be able to jump in the portal, I think that's just gonna promote more clean breaks, if you will. And the reason why I like clean breaks in this scenario is because this is better for everybody, because it gives everybody more options. Because if you are taking 30 days to decide on if you're going to jump in the portal or not, well, then when you do jump in the portal on that 29th day, we as a staff may have missed out on finding the best replacement for you. Because while you were potentially jumping in or not jumping in those 28, 29 days, guys that we would have moved on and taken at your spot already took visits, committed somewhere else, and now they're off the board. And so we have to settle for what would be like plan C or plan D, because you wanted to go back and forth with us about NIL dollars and what's best for you and this and that. And it's like, hey, come on, like let's be snappy here. Let's make a good decision. Also, I think it's worth noting here, this creates more options for the kid. And like, I am as pro player as it gets. I am as pro players have options as it gets. And you jumping in the portal and communicating with your staff on a timely basis allows you to know where you can go, allows you to know where you stand with different schools. And if the school tells you, hey, you're probably number 2, number 3 on our board right now, let's see where things go. And, if you're still available, when we know where these guys are going, like, we'll have a conversation. Like, that's great. Let's have that kind of communication. Let's not do this thing where we are going back and forth with a coach about how much we should make or how much they're going to pay us. And then it comes time for us to make a decision. And actually that school that we wanted to go to, that we were thinking about going to, well, they actually already made their decision on another individual. They already took that player, and now you don't even have a chance to go there. And you missed out on potentially a better fit, and now you're just looking for NIL dollars. I don't think that's best for the kid. So more options for the school, for the replacement, more options for the kid to know where they're going to go. I think overall that's a good thing. I would say this too. This is one more thought on this. Again, I'm assuming that the spring transfer portal, based on this going from 45 days to 30 days, probably still stays at that 15-day mark. I don't know that. I hope I'm wrong on that. But I don't know what the future of spring football is if we're keeping the transfer portal spring window the way that it is as well. Because right now, we've talked about this on this show, you have guys that go through a full spring practice, go through all the installs, go through the base offense, the base defense, everything. Everything, the most important 15 practices. And then once practice finishes, they jump in the portal and end up on another team. And in some sense, they're going to end up on another team that you're going to have to play at some point during the season. So if I'm a staff, I'm saying, what in the world? That was our backup quarterback. And guess what that backup quarterback's going to do? He's going to go hand deliver all the installs to that defensive coordinator and say, hey, this is what they're doing. Here's how to stop it. And guess what? That's legal. There's nothing against the rules in doing that. If I'm the backup quarterback, that's 100% what I'm doing because I want my team to win football games. And so I guess my point in saying this is, what do you do with spring football if that transfer portal in the spring is going to exist the way that it does? Do you just make spring football optional? Do you do away with spring? Like, I don't know what the answer is here. I'm purely asking this because I think this is something that has to be addressed. And we're hearing rumblings of this being addressed. What that looks like in terms of coming to a conclusion, I have no idea. There are people that are a lot smarter than yours truly working on it, but it is worth considering the transfer portal. It can't stay the same. And I don't think it will stay the same. If that encourages anybody, we're already seeing this is now the second evolution of us changing the way the window looks. But the transfer portal has got to change. It's going to reach a final resting place that I hope is best for all parties, both the player and the schools. But something's got to change. But the transfer portal window shortening from 45 to 30 days, win for common sense, a win for us as college football fans because we will have a better gauge for what our roster is going to look like sooner rather than later. And that's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing. All right. Keep a good thing going here. All right. Random college football player of the day from Oregon State, Jaquez Rogers. Dude, he was an absolute stud at Oregon State. He couldn't have been more than 5'8", 5'9". He might have been shorter than that, but he was an absolute dog in the open field. Tough to bring down, great low center of gravity, made you miss. To me, one of the best all-time Pac-10, Pac-12 players. I think he was right there in that era when that transition was going on. I believe he was right on the latter half of that, if not on the line for that. His brother James, too, that he played with at Oregon State, also a stud. They handed it to him on speed sweeps. So a little 2-for-1 for you there. But Jaquez Rogers, random college football player of the day, and he was a dog, and he needs his flowers, so we're giving it to him on this show. So we've been pretty vocal about this. It is, of course, call your shot season. Not prediction season, but call your shot season. And I put the call out to action on my Twitter page. I asked y'all, hey, what is the shot that you're calling in 2024? We're doing our own on the show, but I want to hear from y'all. This is a we, us, ours kind of operation. What's the shot that you're calling? And so I want to go through a few of those right now because we got some good ones. I had this written down on my page. I thought it said for all the dogs, and I was like, all right, big Drake fan. This is from All Dogs 24/7. He says that Georgia will have a wide receiver that goes for over 1,000 yards receiving on the year. So I saw this, thought it was interesting. did some digging on this. Georgia hasn't had a wide receiver go over 1,000 yards, in my understanding, but one time. And that was Terrence Edwards in the early 2000s. Shout out Tight End Wide Receiver Academy. He trains guys in the Atlanta area, does a great job. My answer to this is I could see it. I could see it because Georgia, you look up and down the roster, got a lot of playmakers from a Dominique Lovett, Oscar Delp, if you use him like you did, Brock Bowers, I suppose he could be a guy in that discussion. Colby Young, Dylan Bell, I'm extremely high on this show. London Humphreys, you hear good things about. And you pair that with the idea and the thought that Carson Beck, in his second year in the system, they're going to cut him loose. Right? Like they're going to let Carson cook, and that's a good thing for all parties because right around that Kentucky game when they started to let him have a little bit more reins when it came to the offense, like he was balling. Right? He was throwing the ball all around the yard. So there's that part of it. But the reason why I'm slow to jump on board with this is I just named a lot of different playmakers for Georgia that I think are going to touch the football. So there's already a lot of mouths to feed. But then you pair with that the idea that this running back room also needs to eat. From a Trevor Etienne to a Roderick Robinson. Last year, Georgia was a 52% time run the football team. Like that is, I believe, who they want to be at their core. They want to pound the rock, and they want to hit you over the top as well with their stud quarterback and their playmakers. I feel like if this is going to happen, I would lean towards Dominique Lovett being the guy. Also a guy that's year 2 in the system, transferred over from Missouri last year. He had about 600-plus yards at his first year in the system in Athens. I don't think he would have had quite that many yards had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers stayed healthy. So I could see him in year 2 having a ton of success, but again, I just think there's too many mouths to feed. I think there's too many guys that need to see the football for that to be the case. So that's the bad news, but the good news, I would say, is that I think Georgia will still have one of the best offenses in America. Like, the good news is I don't think you need a receiver to go over 1,000 yards for the first time since Terrence Edwards to accomplish all your goals. I think the beautiful part about Georgia's offense is it will be balanced. You don't know who it's going to be any given week. It's like, hey, is it Dom Lovett this week? Is it Oscar Delp this week? Is Dylan Bell this week playing running back for some reason? I mean, is he back in that Deebo Samuel kind of mold again? Like, I don't know. And the fact that you can keep defenses guessing because of all those weapons and you got a quarterback that can make it all go, that's to me what makes Georgia so scary. So 1,000 yards, I'd probably lean more towards like 3 guys having over 500 yards. I'm going to go ahead and sell on this shot that you're calling, but if you're right, we will revisit it and we will give you your flowers, all dogs 24/7. But if there is someone that goes over 1K on the year, I think it's Dom Lovett. Now, this is probably one of the best Twitter handles I've seen. And I'm still calling it Twitter. Like, we appreciate that they call it X now, but I'm still calling it Twitter. Old habits die hard. From Nate Oatmeal. Not Nate Oates. Nate Oatmeal. He says that Alabama, in year 1 of the Kalen DeBoer regime, will have 1 loss. 1 loss. So I'm assuming now we're speaking just to the regular season. Nate Oatmeal, if you're speaking to the postseason as well, hat tip salute to you. If this happens, they're likely in Atlanta. I don't think that's unreasonable to say. It also probably means as they go to Atlanta, they have a college football playoff spot locked up. Because a runner-up Alabama that only has 1 loss on the year with the schedule they have, they will be a college football playoff team, whether they get a bye or not. Now, it's been no secret. I am high as it gets on Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer. I think that system will accentuate his strengths. I think they got some pass catchers that are maybe a little bit more sneaky, kind of under the radar guys. Like Jeremy Bernard is going to be a dude for you now, coming over from Washington. I'll leave that there. My question is, how much do they get from the defense to make this happen? Like, they only bring back 33% production. I have been hammering that stat to y'all really since those returning production rankings came out. A lot of really talented players, but also a lot of young bucks that you're going to ask a lot of early on in the season. 1 loss feels a little bit rich because of the schedule. Like, you got to play Georgia. So if you're saying losing to Georgia and nobody else, I could see a path of that happening. But there's so many difficult road games, too. Like, you got to go to Tennessee. I think Nico's going to be a stud this year. I think he's going to be one of those guys that could take over a game. I'm not saying you lose. I'm just saying that's going to be a tough one. You go to LSU. If LSU has their ducks in a row, and I believe they do, that game will be at night. Death Valley at night's a different beast. You're at Oklahoma. I'm not saying Oklahoma is a better team. I'm just saying who knows. You go to Norman towards the end of the year. Who's dinged up? Who's available? I don't know. That's a tricky one. And then who knows about Auburn? Like, thankfully, you get them in Tuscaloosa this year, but I think Auburn's a total wild card. So, one loss, I have a harder time buying into. But let's just say they do it. Let's just say that they go out and have a one-loss kind of season. It means that DeBoer's offense cooked, surprise, surprise. But if they have one loss, I just mentioned all the returning production they don't have on defense. If they go out and have one loss his first year out there under Kalen DeBoer, give Kane Womack the team MVP. Like when you have your banquet at the end of the year, every team has this. The team MVP, the defensive player of the year, the offensive player of the year, whoever it is, give all those awards to Kane Womack, all right? Because he will have earned it. Because that means he put a system in place that was able to maximize some young, raw talent to go out and be more than competitive against all those teams that I just mentioned. That's going to be some very good offenses they have to play. Now, the good news, though, within this shot you're calling, I don't think it's going to take a one-loss kind of year for Alabama to check the box their first year under Kalen DeBoer. I think you can reassure everyone in America, most specifically recruits, with a 10-win season, who Alabama is. Because 10-2, I think, still gets you in the playoff, even if you're not in Atlanta. I think 10-2 still communicates loud and clear, hey, Alabama's not going anywhere. We're not taking this jump off a cliff, even though we lost Nick Saban. Like, Alabama's in good hands. Because if you go 10-2 in year one, I think the pitch then becomes to talent to bring them to Tuscaloosa. Like, hey, that was year one. We're just getting started. This whole thing is just getting off the ground. That was the first step. Step 4, 5, and 6 is all the way over there, where we go win national titles, SEC titles, and all that. Come be a part of this in Tuscaloosa. And they will continue to cook, as they have cooked right now on the recruiting trail. So, Alabama ending the season with one loss, I see where you're coming from. I'll lean a little bit more as we sit here right now, reserving our right to change when it comes to prediction season. I will lean more towards them being a 10-2 football team with that being more than enough to do what they need to do in 2024. Now, one more shot I want to unpack here that one of you called. You hit us up and you said Oregon. Yeah, we heard about Ohio State. Yeah, we know Michigan's in that conference. Oregon's going to win the Big Ten, their first year in the conference. Now, checked out FanDuel, checked out the numbers. Oregon has the second best odds to win the Big Ten right now. That's probably not a major surprise to you, but if you're just parachuting into this, Oregon's really freaking good. Oregon's really good. And this is the shot that we are unpacking together on this show that I think I probably would align with the most. Like, there is nobody in the Big Ten that I look at with Oregon from a roster level and say, yeah, I don't love the way they match up. Like we talk about the most versatile teams in college football. Oregon, I think, fits that mold to a T. They got a quarterback who, on paper, with all the games that he's played, fits their offense perfectly with being able to be a distributor of the football. He brings a mobile element. He's a good decision maker. You got skill players to where all you got to do is get him the rock in space. Like Tez Johnson, get him the ball, let him cook. Evan Stewart, I think he's better after the catch than we've been able to see so far in his college career. Jordan James, I think, is going to be a stud for them out there at running back. Like, they got a lot of dudes on that roster. The offensive line is more than good enough to stand up in the trenches in the Big Ten. The defensive line, what they did in the portal, grabbing big Derek Harmon. You got Mateo Uiagalelei. You got Jordan Birch. Like, you walk through every single position group for Oregon. There is not one group that I'm like, I don't know if that's good enough. And as a sum of all the parts, I definitely believe Oregon's good enough. So there's the roster side of things. But then also, like, we understand now rosters, they get you in the building. Do they win the game for you, though? They get you in the house, but do they kick the door down? I don't know if that's always the case. I just love the competitive makeup of this team as we sit here in June. And there's a lot that we're going to learn about Oregon with this new squad, with their new leadership, with Dylan Gabriel running the show at quarterback. But, again, I go back to his experience. The fact that he's played a lot of football games, I don't think he'll walk out there that first series against Ohio State and have the shaky hands. I think he's going to be pretty calm, cool, collected, and be able to do what you need to do as an offense and operate that car how he's supposed to. Let's take it a step further, though. Our theory on the show has always been, and always will be, you take on the persona of your leadership. If your leadership is lackadaisical, loose, high energy, like that's going to be who you are. If your leadership is tight, he's bunched, like there is something scientific to where as a room, as a team, you connect with that and you then become, as a result of that, tight and bunched. I can't explain it, but that's the way that it works. Dan Lanning, his persona is tough, is going to be intense, it's going to be laser focused, it's going to be super prepared, be physical, all those things. To me, when you check those boxes one by one, if that team at Oregon resembles and takes on the persona of Dan Lanning, and they will, they're going to be in that Big Ten title conversation. So Dan Lanning, to me, is the real X factor in this whole thing. Also, he's only in year 3 as a head coach, which is wild to think about. Checking out the schedule, they get Ohio State at home, no Penn State, or at Michigan. There's a path there for them to be in that Big Ten title game. I fully believe that. I think they just have to split Ohio State and Michigan. Who's to say they don't play Ohio State twice? So we'll keep an eye on that. But going back to this, the key is for Oregon to win the Big Ten, the trenches have to be as advertised. And I think more importantly, you got to have Dylan Gabriel firing on all cylinders by the time you play Ohio State October 12th. We can take a few games to get rolling, Dylan. At UCLA, that's fine. Kind of get in the rhythm. You almost went to UCLA. You committed to UCLA at one point in time. At Oregon State, a team you're, I guess, not familiar with so much, but a team that I think Oregon should take care of business. Get the feet wet. Get the sea legs. By the time you play Ohio State, though, it's go mode. All right, there can't be any double clutching, second guessing. Like at that point, we got to be totally comfortable with everything within the offense. Got to know all the checks, got to know all the buttons, all those things. We got to be able to operate this offense like it's ours. Because in that game, that will determine, in my opinion, exactly the ceiling. Not the ceiling. It'll be a great litmus test, though, for Oregon. I'll just say that much. Obviously, playing a roster of Ohio State's caliber will be a great litmus test. But let's walk this through even further. I haven't made my prediction yet on the Big Ten. We will do that as we get closer to August. But if Oregon wins the Big Ten, they get a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. But if Oregon wins the Big Ten, just optically, think about this. You would have Oregon, a brand in college football. It's very recognizable, but is it the most traditional? No. But if they start beating Ohio State, very traditional brand, beat Michigan, very traditional brand, I think Oregon just is a whole Mentos and Coke situation. Just absolutely blows up from a national perspective. Because no longer can you make this argument against Oregon when it goes to, the recruiting side of things that, hey, they're in the Pac-12. Hey, are you sure you want to go play against that level of competition? No, Oregon's now in the Big Ten, and guess what? They're beating those big brands. They are the big dog in one of the biggest conferences, one of the most competitive conferences in college football. Dan Lanning said it on the herd. There's 2 leagues everyone wants to be in right now. Oregon's in one of them. If they own that league the first year, when Dan Lanning's in year 3, same thing I said about Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. What does year 4, 5, and 6 look like? What does the future look like if that's the jumping off point in the new conference, which is, again, one of the premier conferences in the sport? So I like this shot. We will call our own shot in the Big Ten here soon, but Oregon winning the Big Ten their first year in the conference, not crazy in the slightest. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. All right, getting to the live chat here in just a matter of moments. Nick Brake running the show. Get in the queue for him a little bit here, all right? Let's get some questions and let's have ourselves a good old Wednesday and chop it up in the chat. Excited to hear what y'all have to say there. College Football 25 is currently going through their rankings week. Tomorrow, they're going to reveal their top offenses and defenses in the game. We appreciate them doing that. We appreciate them giving us a little 24 hours notice. I guess it was more than that because they told us at the beginning of the week. I'm going to tell you right now who the top offenses and defenses in the game are going to be. You don't need to wait till tomorrow. I'm telling you right now. Before we get to that, make sure you subscribe to this channel. College football every single day. It feels like right now we're talking college football 25 nearly every single day. So dial in, be a part of this. We appreciate you for that. Also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at JD Piquel. Let me know who you think will be the top offense and or defense in this game. I'm an offensive guy. That's kind of my background. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I think the best offense, we'll We'll go 4 or 5-ish range, work our way up to number 1. I think Oregon's going to be the 5th best offense in the game. I mentioned Dylan Gabriel. I'm super high on him. I think Evan Stewart might be one of the best receivers in the game. Tez Johnson was a 1,000-yard receiver. I think there might be some what's the right word? I think there's some uncertainty, maybe for the people making the game, as to what they're going to have in that backfield, which is fair. Oregon might have 2 of the best tackles in this game offensively between Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly. So Oregon, I think they're going to be a top 5 offense in the game. I was super close to putting them at 4 in this. I thought about it even as we were saying it out loud. I was like, man, are they 4? Are they 5? I think it's a coin flip. However you slice it. I'll go ahead and put Ole Miss at 4. I'm super high on Jackson Dart. You could also make the argument that Jackson Dart being comfortable in this system maybe bodes well for his status in the video game. I don't know how much that'll translate when it comes to guys at new destinations and their, I guess, level of acclimation in the system. So I'll put Ole Miss at 4. Big part of this, though, Trey Harris and Juice Wells and that system. Love it. They're going to be a top 5 offense in my mind without a doubt. So Oregon and Ole Miss, however you slice it, 4 and 5, 5 and 4, whatever you want there, I think those are 2 of the top 5 offenses in the game. Now, this is where it gets tricky. This top 3, I think you could also shuffle around quite a bit. I have Ohio State as the 3rd best offense in the game. Will Howard is probably the biggest question mark. I don't know what they're going to rate him. If he's like, is he a 91? Is he an 84? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea how you rate him in this game. But I will say this. Ohio State will have the best wide receiver core in this game, and they will have the best backfield in this game. The offensive line, not a question mark so much as we'll see what they are kind of situation. We'll see how they're rated in this game. But Ohio State, they will be a top 3 offense. I wouldn't be shocked if they're higher, but I'll go ahead and put them at 3. Georgia is going to be the 2nd best offense in this game. They have a case to be, I think, even higher than that. To me, though, Carson Beck will be one of, if not the best quarterback in this game. I think he'll be the 2nd best quarterback in this game based on EA Sports and how they do. I would imagine the cover athlete probably has to be the best quarterback in the game. That would make sense to me. The trenches is just what's going to be filthy for Georgia, man. Like, that's going to be the end-all, be-all. Like, I think, in this game will be able to run inside zone, power left, power right, counter. Like, you can do that all the way down the field, stamina permitting. Like, Georgia's trench play will be filthy. I wouldn't be shocked if they have the best offensive line in this game, but with that all being said, I'll go ahead and put them at 2. Now, Texas, I think, will have the best offense in this game. I love what they did via the transfer portal. I think Isaiah Bond will have a 92-plus kind of speed on this game. Quinn Ewers, I think what I just alluded to before, with being the cover athlete, you probably have to make him the best quarterback in the game. I don't have an issue with that if you're EA Sports and that's the way you want to go about it. Offensive line also should be really solid. Bring back 4 or 5 starters, so they probably should rate them accordingly in the game as well. CJ Baxter, got to see a preview of the movie, what he's going to be in 2024 last season. So all in all, like, you check a lot of boxes in Steve Sarkisian's offense and the scheme in itself. They're going to be really, really good offensively. So to recap it for you, 5-1 here. Oregon at 5, Ole Miss at 4. I could flip either one of those. I'm not mad if you have it flipped. I'll put Ohio State at 3 for the best offense in the game. Georgia, the 2nd best offense in the game, and Texas as the best offense in college football 2025. So that's the offense. That is the offense. Let's go to the defensive side of things now. This is tough at 5, man. Like, I go, even as we're talking about this on the air, I'm thinking about flipping this, but I'll stick to my script here. I'm going to go ahead and put Penn State at 5. I have Penn State at 5. Abdul Carter is a freak show. You have a new DC. Manny Diaz is now the head coach at Duke. Took a Cornell guy, I think, actually as well via the transfer portal, so shouts out to Duke for that. But Tom Allen's going to be a great DC. I don't have any questions there. You lose a little bit in the secondary is maybe why I don't have them higher. If we ran this back last year, Penn State might be, on college football 25 terms, it might be the 2nd best defense in the game. Maybe the best. I'll have them at 5 for this. At number 4, I'll put Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's the head coach. It's a Marcus Freeman defense. You bring back arguably a top 3, top 2 corner in the game in Ben Morrison. I think he will translate to that in the game as well. Xavier Watts, one of the best safeties in college football. So Notre Dame at 4, that feels like a safe play to me. 4 or 5 again. Same thing with the offense. I could see either one. Michigan, I think, will be at 3. Say Michigan, JD, they lose a ton on defense. Yeah, I feel that same way, but as I break this down from a college football 25 perspective, I think they have a chance to have like 3 of the top 10 to 15 defensive players in the game. From Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham on the defensive line, and Will Johnson, I think, is the best corner in college football. I think there's a chance that they are a top 3 defense. I think there's a chance that all 3 of those players are plus 90 overall. So if you have all 3 of those players at a 90 or more rating, I think that qualifies you for a top 3 defense. Georgia should be the second best defense. Line of scrimmage play, what we said about the offense is true. Just a bunch of freak shows up there. Mykel Williams, probably in that discussion for being like 95 plus overall. Linebacker play is ridiculous. What we said about Notre Dame is also true about Georgia, probably even more emphatically. The head coach does defense. It's a Kirby Smart defense, all right? So we'll go ahead and put him at 2. And at number 1, based on returning production and based on going out and snagging the best player in the transfer portal, it's Ohio State. They brought back everybody and their mama, and they went out and got Caleb Downs from Alabama. I don't think this needs to be a major discussion. I think their scheme, too, on this game will be super fun to play with. Jim Knowles being the mad scientist that he is, that'll be a lot of fun to kind of dial up different blitzes and different coverages and try and get your buddy off his game. But I think Ohio State will be the best when it comes to the defensive side of the ball in college football 25. So to recap it on defense, I got Penn State at 5, Notre Dame at 4, Michigan at 3, Georgia at 2, and the Ohio State Buckeyes as the best defense in college football 2025. We will get their list tomorrow, so looking forward to hearing y'all's thoughts on this list as it pertains to comparing it to their list. But those are, I think, the top defenses and offenses in college football 25. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Speaking of the comment section, man, let's go to the live chat right now. The man making it all happen. Heavy lifter, Nick Brake. Nick, what's going on, baby? What's the chat saying?
What's up? Good morning.
Good morning to you, man. What's going on in the old live chat?
My mic was really hot. Well, we got a lot of stuff today, so I was wondering, do you want to go like express questions today?
Express questions, I love it.
There's a lot of them.
I love it.
A lot of them that people came back and asked.
Let's go. That's
Okay.
good news.
We're gonna start with the truth. Riddle me this: Michigan knew every play everyone was running. Why did they shut everyone out and win 3 straight national titles? I know everything, or I know you shouldn't shut everyone out. I don't know what that last sentence meant, but JD, what do you make of this? I worked for the Wolverine during all of this last year, and this is something that Chris Bellis was saying a lot.
This is tough. It's tough because we're trying to go express here, so I'll do this in
Yeah, you don't have to. Whatever.
as concise as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the signals does not equate to knowing the football play. Also, knowing the football play does not equate to being able to stop the football play, which was my big issue in that whole Michigan discussion. So should Michigan have had a better defensive output because of the whole Connor Stallion stuff? I don't think so. I think what they did on the field against Ohio State and against Washington serves as a pretty solid exhibit A and B for how good that defense was, and I don't think they have anything left to prove. So that's my opinion on that.
Okay. Jared Stidham, when your kids ask about the Pac-12, what game are you going to be showing them?
Oh, man.
And why is it a 7 p.m. kickoff, assuming that means 7 Pacific?
Man. Gosh, this is a great question.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a good question. Again, I'm like, gosh, we only got time for
it. Whatever.
Okay, let's roll, JD. Come on, get your head in the game, kid. Jeremiah Masoli on Halloween night tore up USC. That, to me, is just burned in my mind. Also, for whatever reason, a lot of my memories are tied to, like, Jeremiah Masoli because he was one of my favorite guys on the read option to watch. Him and Nick Foles going back and forth in a multiple overtime game. Arizona and Oregon was a fun one. I'll watch that one for sure with our kiddo. You probably got to have a USC UCLA in there. I think that's a great matchup to have. Which one is a great question. I might show him the USC where Reggie Bush jumps over that UCLA defender during his Heisman season. That's a good one. So there's going to be a whole long, like, probably a whole schedule for us when that time comes, and just binge. Yeah, just kind of binge watch a couple of those ones. But those are just the ones that come off the top of the dome for me.
Sounds good.
Stanford USC. Sorry, Stanford USC is a good one.
There you go.
Coach Edo. Okay, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Go Dog. What's your favorite red, white, and blue uniform in college football?
Ooh, red, white, and blue uniform.
Could go do all of the military stuff too. I know they have a lot of those too. So
Yeah, dude, they're
July
awesome.
4th.
Oh, man.
Question.
Man, I'm trying to think of who all has sweet ones. I think Northwestern had some sick ones, if I'm not mistaken. I think a lot of the Under Armour schools did some cool, like, patriotic ones. I know Northwestern did. I'm struggling to remember if Maryland did or not. I think they did. I think they were sweet. I think those two were very, very cool. So I'll go ahead and say those right now. My favorite, though, like if we're going on the patriotic side, Navy several years ago played Ohio State, and they did the summer whites. Like if you were in the military, and this is, again, very loose interpretation. So if you're watching, you're in the military, one, thank you for your service. Two, I apologize for wherever I'm off base here. I believe during the summer, the Navy wears these specific white uniforms, and they look clean as heck, and Under Armour did their own take on those uniforms and made them look freaking sweet when they played Ohio State. So those are probably my favorite, like, in the patriotic lane of uniforms that I really enjoy.
Sounds good. Two more.
Love it.
The first one, coming from Happen, I like this one. A time traveler from 2030 appears to you and tells you that from 2024 to 2030, one team in the Big 12 cements itself as a guaranteed yearly playoff team. Who are they talking about? That's a truth question.
That is a really good question.
Yeah.
That's a
this
truth.
Is the Happen.
That's a truth bomb right there.
Yeah.
From the Big 12. I'm going to say Utah. Like Kyle Whittingham has just been the embodiment of consistency. I could see Kansas State. I wouldn't hate that if that was your take. I just think with Kyle Whittingham now being in the Big 12, his teams are always tough. They're always physical. They always find a way to win games that they maybe aren't supposed to on paper. Like they were playing a pig farmer at quarterback last year and found a way to be a disruptor. So I think Utah's that team that will cement themselves in this discussion, in this hypothetical, as a college football playoff team.
Okay. Man, there's so many good questions.
You want two more? We got two more?
Let's do two more.
Let's shoot. Let's shoot for two more.
I have two I really want to ask.
I love it.
This first one, just going down the line, it is from. Sorry, guys.
You're good.
Okay,
man.
It's Keys to Success. Says ACC prediction for them. Georgia Tech only one loss in conference, and it comes to Florida State. They have a rematch in the ACC championship where they win and get a playoff berth. So they're calling their shot. Georgia Tech to the playoff. JD, I have the schedule pulled up. They start. Where are they playing that game against FSU?
I think it's in Ireland.
Yeah, they're playing in Ireland. This is a tough schedule. I don't know about this. Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Miami, NC State. That's 4 straight weeks, and then they end with Georgia. I don't really like this opinion. I respect it, but that's tough.
Yeah, in Dublin, Ireland, a little ACC play, huh? Who would have thought? That's going to be fun, August 24th. Yeah, if that happens, that means Haynes King went bonkers. And I think also that means they probably had to win the ACC because I think Notre Dame's going to be a tough one. They play that one, though, in Mercedes-Benz. That's kind of fun instead of at Bobby Dodd. But, hey, it's college football. We're coming off of 2 years where TCU made the national championship. Washington, I understand they were maybe a little bit more put together during their playoff run, but, they made the playoff. Is Georgia Tech what TCU was in 2022?
Perhaps.
Let's see. Hey, who am I to say no if you're calling your shot? But I like that. The Fighting Haynes Kings getting it done.
Okay, last question. There's so many good ones, everyone. If we don't get to it, I'm very sorry. Conqueror says, what's more likely, a 10-win season for USC or Nebraska?
A 10-win season for USC or Nebraska. You know what? I'll go Nebraska here. And that is based on, I think, at the line of scrimmage, what it takes in the Big Ten. Nebraska, I feel a little bit more sure of. Not to say that USC is not going to be competitive and, they're going to get thrown around. I think a lot of people are saying that right now. I don't know that I buy that wholeheartedly. I think Nebraska, if we look at last year alone and woulda, shoulda, coulda, but, if you have them going 5-0 in one-score ball games, they win 10 games a season ago. They went 5-7 and they lost 5 games by 1 score. So I probably wouldn't pick today either of those teams to be a 10-win team. We'll see when prediction season rolls around. But because of what Dylan Raiola could be, because of how solid I believe they are On defense, I think Nebraska would be my pick there, having to pick between those two to be 10-win football teams.
Okay.
Good stuff. Nick, any break takes for the people before we jump into our rest of our Wednesday and then look to Thursday?
Yeah, not today. I won't be on air for a while, though, so when I am, I'll see you then, guys.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's that man, Nick Brake, making it all happen. We appreciate you, brother.
Yep.
We are going to have a show tomorrow. Whether it's a premiere or a live is still TBD. Next week, though, bunch of great conversations for you. So this show will be as is. We got conversations with guys like SEC Mike, Jesse Simonton. Going to be a lot of fun. So also, we're going to have a show on 4th of July. So, I mean, this is no disrespect to other shows. If there's another show that's taking 4th of July off, that's totally fine. Just come watch this show. All I'm saying. Come enjoy this show, and we'll talk some ball, and we'll have a good time, and we'll bring in the America's Birthday the right way, talking about, I'm biased, but the most American sport, the best sport America has to offer, which is, of course, college football. So, one more thing to say, though, here before we get off the air. Follow me on the socials. One, because I ask I'll do that a lot because it helps us with interaction. It helps us, do more of what you want to see by, hearing y'all's response to content. But also, next week, with all our shows being on premiere, there's going to be probably some stuff that happens, right? Like, we understand now we're in Hayes Fawcett season, so kids are committing. Schools are making runs on the recruiting trail. Apparently, the transfer portal window is shrinking or there's stuff going on with that. I'll react to those in real time on my social channels as best as I can. So Instagram and Twitter at JD Piquel. If you want to hear my thoughts on some breaking news or what have you, those are the places where I'll be able to respond in the most expedient fashion. And obviously we'll talk about it on the show going forward, but those are the best places to hear from y'all and also for y'all to hear from me in real time next week. But hey, man, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We are grateful for y'all making this show what it is. Again, shows next week. We're rolling as is if you're on the podcast. Nothing changes. But we appreciate y'all being a part of this, making this program, like I said, the program that it is. So, for Nick Brake, for myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all and we love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.